My grandmother left me her house when she died. Inside, I found a journal she kept for 12 years. The last entry was dated the morning she died. It was a warning. For me. My grandmother's name was Marta Voss. She was 81 years old when she died. She died alone in the house she lived in for 60 years on a Tuesday morning in November. The neighbors noticed because the lights didn't come on. She left the house to me, not to my mother, not to my uncle, to me. I was the youngest, the one she called her serious one. I never knew what she meant by that. Now I think I do. I drove down the weekend after the funeral to start clearing things out. My mother wouldn't come. She said the house made her feel strange. She'd been saying that my whole life. The house made her feel strange. I always thought it was grief or memory. I didn't think it would be anything more than that. The house is at the end of a gravel road, about 4 miles outside of town. Old farmhouse, 2 stories, white paint gone gray, a big oak tree in the front yard that my grandmother said she'd been there before the house. She said her mother had told her to never damage that tree, not to hang anything from it, not to carve into it, not even sit beneath it after dark. She never explained why, but I never thought to ask. I parked in the gravel road and sat in the car for a moment. It was cold, late afternoon. The sky was doing the thing in November where it goes white instead of blue, flat and pale and too bright somehow. The front door was unlocked. It always was unlocked. My grandmother didn't believe in locked doors, she said, and I remember this clearly. She said it more than once. Locks only keep out people who respect them. I used to think that was an old woman's stubbornness. I don't think that anymore. I started in the bedroom. Most of her things were simple, practical. A woman who grew up with very little and never stopped living that way. Clothes folded with a precision that made me feel wasteful just looking at them. A bedside table with 3 things on it. A glass of water. Still there, and it was still half full. A photograph I'll come back to. And a journal. The dark green cover, no title, no name, and a piece of masking tape on the front with 2 words written in her handwriting. Read alone. I sat down on the edge of the bed. It still smelled like her. Lavender and something older underneath. Something like cedar or earth. And I opened the journal. The first entry was dated January 3rd, 11 years ago, and it began. And I'm going to read this part to you exactly as she wrote it. I'm starting this journal because I'm running out of time, and someone needs to know. I've spent my whole life trying to protect this family from something I did not choose and cannot undo. I have not told my children because knowing does not help. It only makes you watch. And watching is the worst part. If you're reading this, it means I choose you. It means I believe you are strong enough to carry it without breaking. I am sorry. I'm sorry more than I know how to write, but you need to know about the agreement, and you need to know what happens to us when we forget it. I read that paragraph 4 times, sitting on the edge of her bed, in the house that always made my mother feel strange. Beneath the oak tree, she never said to sit under after dark, and outside, the light was going. I need to tell you about the photograph before I go any further, because I think it matters. I think she put it there on purpose, next to the journal, so I'd see them both together. It's a family photograph, black and white, Old, not vintage filter old, genuinely old. The paper is thick and slightly curved at the corners. 7 people standing in front of this house. The same house. The same oak tree in the background. Smaller but unmistakable. A man and a woman in the center. 4 children arranged around them. And standing slightly apart from the group at the very edge of the frame. A figure. Tall, dark clothing, facing the camera but somehow not quite in focus. Everything else is sharp, clear, but this figure is blurred, soft at the edges, like they moved at the exact moment the photograph was taken, or like they were never fully there to begin with. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting I didn't recognize, not my grandmother's handwriting, older, formal, 4 words. We remember the agreement. I put the photograph face down and I kept reading. I'm going to read you some of what she wrote, not all of it. There are parts I'm still trying to understand, but enough. January 19th. The cold is bad this year. I find myself checking the windows more than usual. My mother used to do this. Stand at the kitchen window after dark, watching the tree. I asked her once what she was looking for. She said nothing. I hope. I understand that now. I'm 40 years late to understanding it, but I understand it. March 4th. Spoke with my sister Isle on the phone tonight. She's been having the dreams again. I told her to write them down and she said she didn't want to. I said, Isle, writing them down is the only way to keep track of what it wants. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said, Marta, what if I don't know what it wants? I don't have an answer for that. April 30th. Today is the anniversary. I sat with it the way Mother taught me. You acknowledge it, you don't ignore it, and you don't dwell on it. You simply sit with it like you'd sit with a difficult neighbor, politely, briefly, and then you go back inside. The anniversary of what? She never says. Not in any entry I've found. She just calls it the anniversary. Every year, April 30th. I looked it up. April 30th is Walpurgis Night, the night before May Day, an old European folklore. It's the night when the barrier between the living and the dead is the thinnest. When things that normally stay hidden come close. My grandmother had one sister, Voss, younger by 3 years. I met her maybe 4 or 5 times as a child. She was quiet, watchful, the kind of person who stood with their back to the wall at family gatherings, who always seemed to be counting the exits. She moved away in her 40s, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, and slowly, the calls between her and my grandmother got further and further apart. By the time I was a teenager, I'd forgotten she existed. The journal mentions her 43 times. I counted. And the early entries, she's a presence, someone my grandmother leans on, someone who understands. But around the 4th year of the journal, the mentions start to change. Called Isle, no answer. I'll try again next week. Isle has not returned my last 3 calls. I'm trying not to read into this. Her number has been disconnected. I wrote a letter, no reply. I think Isle has chosen to forget. I understand why. I cannot blame her. But forgetting is not the same as being free of it. Forgetting is just not watching. The thing is still there whether you want to watch it or not. I found a phone number for Isle Voss in Oregon. I called it 2 weeks after I found the journal. It rang 7 times, and then someone picked up. Silence on the line, and then a woman's voice, very quiet, said, "How did you get this number?" Not a question, a statement, like she already knew. I said I'm Marta's granddaughter. I said I found her journal. A very long silence, and then she said, "Don't read any more of it." And she hung up. I kept reading. Of course I kept reading. The word agreement appears in the journal 31 times. She never once explains what it is. She writes around it the way you'd write around something too large to look at directly, referencing it sideways, assuming the reader already knows. But there's one entry near the middle of the journal where she comes the closest, where she almost says it. August 12th. I have been thinking about how to explain the agreement to whoever reads this, and I keep running into the same problem, that the words we have for it are all wrong. It is not a curse, though it feels like one. It is not a deal, though it began as one. The closest I can get is this. Somewhere in our family's past, something was given, and in return, something was promised. The giving was a long time ago. The promising has never stopped. Every generation of this family is born already in the middle of keeping a promise they did not make. We do not get to renegotiate. We do not get to refuse. We can only remember and be careful and keep the old rules and hope that it stays satisfied. The ones who forgot the rules. The entry ends there, mid-sentence. The next page has been torn out. I checked the binding, carefully removed, not torn in anger, but deliberate. Like she thought about it, like she decided there were things I needed to know and things I didn't. Not yet. I should have driven home that evening. I had a perfectly good apartment 2 hours away, but it was dark by the time I'd read that far, and I told myself the drive wasn't safe, and I stayed. I slept in my grandmother's bed. I don't know why. I could have taken the guest room, but the journal was there on the bedside table, and I didn't want to be far from it. I woke up at 3 a.m. No alarm, no sound, just suddenly, completely awake. The way you get when something has changed in a room. I lay still and I listened. Rain on the windows, the old house settling, and then, from downstairs, the sound of a door. Not opening, not closing, just moving. Like someone had pushed it gently and let it swing. I got up. I told myself it was the wind. Old houses, old doors, loose latches. I told myself this very firmly. I went to the top of the stairs and looked down. The front door was open. The door my grandmother never locked, standing open 4 or 5 inches, cold air coming through, and the oak tree outside, visible through the gap. Something was standing beneath it. I couldn't see it clearly, just a shape in the dark beneath the branches. Still, the way things are still when they know you're watching. I stood at the top of the stairs for a very long time, and the shape, it stood beneath the tree. Neither of us moved. And then, slowly, it turned and looked up at the window. I went back to bed. I pulled the covers up, and I lay there with the journal in my chest, like a shield, like my grandmother had meant it that way. In the morning, I went outside. The ground beneath the oak tree was wet from the rain. There were marks in the mud, not footprints, just compression, like something heavy had stood there. Something with no distinct shape, something that pressed down without leaving a form. I took a photograph. I'll show it in the next episode. I've been back to the house 3 times since then. Each time I read more of the journal. Each time I understand a little more about what my grandmother was protecting us from. And each time, something beneath that tree knows I'm there. In the next episode, I'm going to read you the entries about my great-grandmother. Her name was Britta. She was the first one in the journal to mention a name for the thing. Just once. And an entry my grandmother copied from an older document. The document, she says, has been destroyed. She wrote the name down, and then she wrote underneath it, "Do not say this aloud. Do not think about it before sleep. Write it down if you must. Read it once, and then turn the page." I turned the page. I should have listened. Good night. I'll see you in the next one.